Reptiles come in many different shapes and sizes, but all are wonderful. They have tough scales to protect their body, especially useful if you're a snake slithering over sharp rocks. Britain's biggest reptile, at almost 2 meters long, is the grass snake. It has a yellow stripe behind its head and can swim. Although grass snakes are good swimmers, the female lays her eggs on dry land. Another snake that can be found in Britain is the adder. Adders don't lay eggs, but instead have live young, between 5 and 20 tiny snakes at a time. In other countries, you can find some dangerous reptiles, like this spitting cobra, who looks like it has a hood over its head. Then there are boa constrictors. They use their strong muscles to squeeze other creatures until they can't breathe. Boa constrictors will eat frogs, birds, lizards, and even small deer or monkeys. Watch out, it's an alligator. These reptiles hunt in the water and use their sharp teeth to bite their prey. All turtles love to swim, but this female turtle has come ashore to a sandy beach to lay her eggs. When the tiny turtles hatch, they scramble through the sand and down to the sea all by themselves. There are lots of amazing lizards, and they come in all shapes and sizes. Lizards smell by licking the air with their tongues. Some lizards, like this gecko, don't have any eyelids, so they also use their tongues to lick their eyes clean. One lizard that can do something very special is the chameleon. It is able to change the color of its skin to match the leaves or stones around it. This makes them hard to see, as they are camouflaged. Our world is full of reptiles, some small and shy, others big and fierce, but all of them are amazing.
Good afternoon, Year 1, and welcome to Tuesday's science lesson. Can you guess what animal we're doing today? Reptiles, you're right. We've already looked at mammals. You see? Can you remember some of those details about mammals? They are warm-blooded. They live on land and in water. They have hair or fur. They have skeletons on the inside of their bodies. They give birth to live babies. And those babies drink their mother's milk. They can have 4 legs or no legs. And these front 4 legs are sometimes called arms. Humans are a mammal too. We've also looked at last week fish, which are cold-blooded, live in water. They have fins to move and gills to breathe. They don't have lungs like us. They don't breathe air like mammals. And they have skeletons on the inside of their bodies too. And they lay eggs in water. They don't have live young like a mammal. The eggs are soft on a fish, usually. We also looked at birds last week. Now, birds are warm-blooded like mammals. They live on land and water. They have feathers, which is unique to birds. There's no other animal type that has feathers. They have wings and a beak. And they have skeletons on the inside of their bodies too. And they lay eggs, usually hard eggs and on land. So today we are going to look at reptiles. Okay. We are also going to look at, I love this word, amphibians. Can you say that word? Amphibians. That's a great word, isn't it? Now, these are cold-blooded, like a reptile. A reptile is cold-blooded too. They can live on land and in water. So can an amphibian. Now, an amphibian has moist skin and webbed feet, whereas a reptile has scales. ear holes, and dry skin. So amphibians have wet skin, reptiles have dry skin. They have skeletons on the inside of their bodies, but tortoises have one on the outside too, don't they? A shell. It's sort of like part of their skeleton. And they lay eggs. Amphibians and reptiles lay eggs. This is a very tricky group, a very tricky pair of groups, amphibians and reptiles. Sometimes you can get them a little bit mixed up. But today we're going to look at the different groups and make sure we don't get them mixed up. Make sure we know the features of each group. Okay, so we're back to BBC Bite Size, and we're going to have a look at their version of what is a reptile.
Reptiles look a lot like dinosaurs. In fact, dinosaurs were reptiles. Not all reptiles have 4 legs and look like a dinosaur. Some have no legs, like these snakes, and aren't slimy, but have dry, scaly skin. Some give birth to live young, but mostly they lay eggs. Reptiles are cold-blooded. This means they can't keep warm without help, but also means they can get too hot. So reptiles, like crocodiles, hang out by the water to cool down. Some are squeezers, some are biters, and some are a little bit different. But something they all have in common is that they all have lungs and breathe air.
Okay, so let's have a look at the BBC Bite-sized version of what an amphibian is, and let's see if you can spot the difference. I'm going to put the links to the BBC Bite-size underneath this video when I put this video on, and you can watch them again if you want, and you can do the activities underneath. There's a little quiz underneath. Let's see if you can do that activity. Okay, so let's find out about amphibians.
Amphibians are amphibious. This means they're quite happy on land and water. Nearly all amphibians lay eggs, usually in or near water. When amphibians hatch, they have gills, which means they can breathe underwater. As they get older, they develop lungs. This means they now breathe air, like us. Most have 4 legs, but there are a few with no legs. They have smooth skin. Amphibians are cold-blooded, which means they become the same temperature as their surroundings. So when it's hot, they're hot. And when it's not, they'll hibernate for the winter.
Okay, so we've got a quiz now. We've looked at all those different types of animals. We've looked at mammals, birds, fish, reptiles, and amphibians. 5 different groups of animals. And we're going to have a little game now, and I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4 questions, that's all. So if you write on your pad and paper, if you want to pause the video to go and get some, that's fine. If you write on your pad and paper, number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. And we're going to play odd one out. Now you've got to think about those groups of animals that we've learned about for the last few weeks. So this is number 1. Can you see? So there's 3 animals. There's a chameleon, a tiger, and a camel. Do you know what type of animals they are? What type of animal is the chameleon? What type of animal is a tiger? What type of animal is the camel? And when you've thought about what group they belong in, I want you to decide which is the odd one out, which is different from the other 2, and why. So number 1, which one is not the same as the other 2? Have a think about it and write it down. Then we're going to go on to number 2. Can you see number 2? This is number 2 here. So we've got a shark, and we've got a snake, and we've got a tetrafish. Which one is the odd one out? Which group do they all belong to? And which one is the odd one out? Because it is our, what? Which one? That's number 2. Pause the video if you need a little bit more time. This is number 3. So we've got a penguin and a parrot and a tortoise. Which is the odd one out? Which is not the same group as the other 2? Can you write it down? And then the last one is this one. I've got a beautiful coloured bird here. I think this is a gecko or an iguana. And then we've got a peacock. What group do they belong to? And which one is not the same as the other 2? Which one is the odd one out? And why is that one the odd one out? Right, the final task for the science this afternoon. If you've done the activities on the BBC Bite Size for reptiles and amphibians and you've done the quiz, then can you log into Purple Mash, and on your to-dos you will find what am I? Now this is another similar to the one that we did in computing yesterday, and we're going to take a look at some animals and put them into groups by looking at the things we have in common or that are the same. And can you sort them into fish, birds, mammals, reptiles and amphibians? And they're the groups that we've been looking at over the last few weeks. Now again, it's timed like the computing one yesterday. So let's have a look. So the first one
birds into the correct groups
is fish and birds. You need to put all the correct animals into the correct groups. Make sure that they're properly inside the big square, otherwise it'll mark it wrong. I know, because I got it wrong the other day. And there are 4 questions for you to do with fish, birds, some are reptiles, some are mammals, and some are amphibians. Think about it really carefully. Okay, think about it really carefully. Let's see if you can get them all correct.